Hey guys, it's Emily. Welcome to Posy Lane. If you're brand new here at Posy Lane, we like to do fun, easy, doable crafts. Subscribe for more crafting videos. Today we're going to be looking at 5 fun and different ways that you can dye Easter eggs without using a kit. So have you ever been like scrolling Facebook and you're looking and all of a sudden there will be a picture that says do this crazy thing? I always see those and wonder if they're going to work or not. And the other day I was scrolling through and I saw one that said dye Easter eggs with Kool-Aid. All you need is like water and the Kool-Aid and it will dye them. It just made me start thinking like, is that going to really work? And are there some other really cool methods that would work for dyeing Easter eggs? So I started doing a search and looking up different fun ways to do them, and I tested all of them so that I can bring them to you and know that they all definitely work. Our first method that we're going to be using to dye the eggs is with coffee filters and washable markers. But I want to say this before we start all the different methods. You need to boil eggs. Otherwise, think about like the mess that you're going to have if you have broken eggs. And then for the first method, you're going to need coffee filters and something to spray water with, water-soluble markers, and I got mine in this really cute mug that I had hydro dipped with nail polish. I had to look up what water-soluble markers were, and it just means that they're washable markers. Last but not least, I'm going to be using some gloves for all these different methods so that my hands don't look crazy with all the different dye. The good thing with these is that they are washable and your hands should wash clean. The first thing that we're going to do is color the coffee filter. And when we color it, that marker is going to transfer to the egg. And I was really skeptical at first when I saw this online, like coloring an egg and dyeing it with marker and a coffee filter, I wasn't sure that it was going to work. When you do color it, you want it to kind of be random. So it doesn't really matter how you color it. It's just mostly you don't want to leave a lot of white. That's my tip for you guys. The other thing I noticed is that you want to use darker colors, like this green works really well, and I've had this purple work, but like the yellow and red don't transfer well to the egg. And lastly, you really want to make sure to press hard, otherwise there's not enough ink to transfer to the egg. I'm going to go ahead and get this colored and we'll put the egg in here, wrap it around, and see how it works. Here are the coffee filters all colored. All you need to do is get the egg in the middle and you'll wrap it around and spray it. This will transfer to the egg. The funny thing about seeing these coffee filters, for me, when I make coffee, I'll use a French press, or my favorite method is the Nespresso machine, which is kind of like Keurig, but it's for espresso. I usually make an Americano with it. But when I see coffee filters, I'm normally thinking about what crafts can I make with this? Like I have made butterflies with them, I have made stained glass with them, but the last time I think I actually used a coffee filter for coffee, I was probably making an adult coffee when I was like 9 or 10. What I love about this is because we're using washable markers, this is going to transfer possibly to your hands, but all you need is soap and water and it's going to come off. And as a mom, I know how busy you can be, so this is so quick. It doesn't take very long to do. And if you have little kids that want to be in there and want to do it themselves, this is great because instead of having dye where you're scared of it getting on their clothes and on their hands, this will just wash right off with soap and water. Now that I've sprayed it all, I'm just going to put it on a paper towel and let it sit for about 10 minutes. And all I do is just press down every so often on it to make sure that that ink is transferring to the egg. I've let these sit for about 10 minutes and I realized I had mentioned using gloves and I ended up not using them, but you can if you want to. And so these are ready to open up. Oh wow. The color really reminds me kind of watercolor, like it's lighter in some areas and darker in other areas. Also, if you notice, like they're kind of wet a little bit. It looks good, but I think if it sits and dries a little bit more, it's gonna look even better. I just let these sit for like 5 minutes and they're already darker. I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but I can definitely tell. This one reminds me of the ocean. See all the swirls? And this one really reminds me of like the galaxy and like a beautiful dark purple sky. I don't know because this is my first one and I haven't done all the other ones, but this might be my favorite. The next method that we're going to be doing is just with rice and food coloring. I just have this long grain rice that I'm going to be using, and you need a cup per color. And then I have some sandwich baggies here, and I'm only going to be doing 2 colors right now, but you need 1 per color. And then the last thing you need is food coloring. I have 2 different boxes with a bunch of different colors, and I'm just going to pick 2 of those out to do. I have measured out a cup of rice for each of the bags. What we're going to do is just add the food coloring to this, then add an egg and shake it around, and you'll have a dyed Easter egg. Kind of reminds me of like shake and bake. I never made it, but in the 80s and 90s, there were all these commercials for shake and bake. And I remember this little girl and making like kind of like fried chicken, I think. And she'd say, it's shake and bake. And I helped. The little girl always had like a really Southern country accent. What I love about this craft is that it's really a contained mess. Yes, there's food dye in it. It's all going in a baggie and being sealed up. And so it's really not that messy. I added 10 drops of the food coloring, and now I'm just going to seal it up and shake it so that the rice gets kind of an even coat of this dye all on it. I love crafts where there's like steps that the parent does, but then there's a point where you can kind of pass it on to your kids and they get to help and they get to feel like they have ownership in making it. And this is the part where you can pass it off to your kids and let them put the egg in, and you'll seal it really well and you let them shake it and they feel like they got to make this egg. What's so crazy about this is the color almost instantly dries, and this is so pretty with this speckled look. It reminds me of a natural egg. This is a step that I'm gonna do. I wanna have 2 colors on here. So what I'm going to do is add food coloring to this bag, shake up this egg in there so that it has another color on it. So you can see, because it was already dry, when I put it in the second color, like it didn't bleed at all. I've always tried to do like 2-toned eggs, and usually the colors bleed and it just doesn't come out the way I want it. It looks so pretty and really does not bleed at all. I've always wanted to dye Easter eggs just with food coloring, because I've seen people say all you need is food coloring to dye Easter eggs, but I've never actually tried it, and secretly I've always been like, does that really work? Just using food dye? Could I just use food coloring and that's all I need? And for it, you're gonna need boiling water, and then the food coloring like I've already showed you, and then you may not know this, but you're going to need vinegar, and I'll tell you why in a second. I think that doing the food coloring method is probably the closest thing to the classic kit that you get at the grocery store. And there's so many colors of food coloring. The only one I think that probably wouldn't work is the yellow, because sometimes it reads as orange or it's just not bright enough and looks pale. And I boiled 2/3 of a cup of water for each of these bowls. I know I mentioned that the vinegar is important, and the reason why it's important is it's going to help the egg really soak up the dye and be more bright and vibrant. This is a little bit more messy than some of the other methods, so I would recommend moms to go outside to do this. I am going to pour a teaspoon of vinegar in each of these, but when I go outside, I normally get a plastic tablecloth from the party store and put it underneath. So when I'm cleaning up, all I have to do is gather that tablecloth up and the mess is already managed. I've been dyeing Easter eggs since I was a kid, all the way through adulthood. This is something fun for everyone, and I hope that I can pass that tradition on to you guys. I did use 10 drops of this, and I just need to stir it up and do my next color. These colors are so bright and bold, especially compared to some of the other methods that we've done. I'm just rolling the egg around to try to get this an even coating on it so it's all evenly dyed. If you think about this, this is food dye and this is a hard-boiled egg. These would be great for like a snack or in your kid's lunchbox because it's all food safe as long as you kept the hard-boiled eggs refrigerated. I normally just let these soak for about 5 minutes and I'll move it around and stir it and kind of do a little bath over it. I don't know if that's more helping it be more even or if that's in my head, but 5 minutes seems to work. These came out so bright and so bold. I love like the even color on them. Now let's move on to the next method using markers. For this marker method, we need washable markers, sandwich baggies, and of course we need eggs. All you're doing is taking a marker and coloring it on a baggie, and then you're going to transfer that to an egg. When I saw this online, it just seemed too easy. Like, this seems too simple to really work. But now that I know that it really does work, I'm wondering what other like really fun applications and other crafts I could do with it. Like, would it work for like ceramics or pottery or something like that? I've always used marker for like a stencil. Like, I had a stencil and I'd literally be coloring on here. So I love that there's these new methods with marker that I'm seeing. And I've always wanted to do new things like this. And I'm so glad I've finally done it. And now I think I want to really try yellow, because I think that's the most promising with this method of the yellow really showing up. I'm most excited about this method that we're trying now with Kool-Aid. And so I had mentioned this earlier that I'd seen this on Facebook, and all they said that you needed was Kool-Aid and water. I noticed on there that they said, like, for the yellow, you had to add orange to it to even get it to look yellow, and I didn't want to mess with that. I'm going to try this blue and orange, and then we're going to need boiling water and something like a bowl to dye it in. And I really can't wait to try this Facebook hack. We're on to the Kool-Aid now, and this is a method that started it all. When I saw this on Facebook, I knew I had to see what other methods were out there, and I've had so much fun trying them all. I put 2/3 of a cup of water in each of these bowls that I've already boiled. And all you need to do is add a packet of Kool-Aid to each one. And seeing the Kool-Aid man on there, it makes me think of the 90s and the commercials they had. It made Kool-Aid seem so much fun. The Kool-Aid man would usually burst through a wall and he'd be saying, "Oh yeah," like in this really deep voice. And the kids always seemed to be having so much fun. But I almost never actually drank Kool-Aid as a kid. Like, I bought this as an adult and didn't realize that you have to add like sugar to it to even make it. I always had this instant lemonade called Country Time lemonade. The thing about this is these actually smell really good. Like, this is orange, so it's gonna be orange scented, and the other one's blue raspberry. The same with the food coloring method. I'm just gonna put the egg in here and let it sit for about 5 minutes and try to get a really good even coat on the egg. I've let this sit for 5 minutes and it really actually worked. There's a little bit of speckle to it where the dye didn't take. And I'm thinking about all the different flavors of Kool-Aid, how fun it would be to try to dye all these different eggs in them. And I love how bright it is. I'm so happy with all the results. Let's look at the results now that all the eggs have dried. With the coffee filter, it is kind of like a lighter look to it. It's not as dark as some of the other ones, but I think it's so pretty and kind of reminds me of like watercolor. The rice in a baggie, this one was so cool because it's so easy to do like layers and maybe even come up with cool color combinations. So I definitely want to try this one. Again, darkest method, the one that came out with the best like vibrant color. I would say that the food coloring was the best. If you can see, both of these came out so bright. I think they're even brighter than any kit I've ever done. And then the next method I think is the easiest and quickest, where you just put the marker on a baggie and then rubbed it on. And you could do anything with that, like color combinations and all. It would be so fun just to get you even maybe more detailed with it than I did, but I was so happy with how that one turned out. The Kool-Aid one was probably the best smelling one. I think it wins best smelling. And when it dried, it did look a little bit like splotchy, but I think it looks really pretty and kind of cool. And I'm so glad that this Facebook hack actually worked. Thank you guys so much for coming along with me today as we tried all these different dyeing methods. I had so much fun and I can't wait for our next craft.